what happens to your body when you leave this level of life.
We are in the real universe is a real position, and looking over what's coming next as I have come back from the lifetime of an Indian as Goldie, and then meeting once again these individuals that I mentioned in the book, etc., and everybody deciding their positions at that time. What's very interesting about this is that Revazar and the real guides had lined up all kinds, thousands upon thousands of people to take part in this. I was part of that too. Paul was there, etc., because of what we have been through for lifetimes and getting agreements on the real side to come into this life again, to recognize the is, because people were there, but it doesn't mean they recognize the is, because that's a big step, a very big step. So there's a lot of agreement there, and as people came through, it's very, very interesting that, things began to get a little funny. So we'll get into that anyhow. So Paul was to come first, set things up, etc., with Revazar and the guides, and he would create his idea, which would be basically Ekankar, and move people along. He was to come in first to kind of gather the ideas of what was on the earth at that time while he was here, as he went through his process to get the physical body and the other bodies coordinated in conjunction with what he wanted to do here. And so he went through a lot to do that too, and we all do, because we have to deal with these 5 bodies and at the same time try to have some awareness as to what's going on and whatever's going on in the world, etc. So we got to deal with that. That's the biggie. So we come into this place and it's basically a battlefield. In Paul's day, it wasn't like it is now today. No, of course not. So, and in book 2, I describe how I came into this life, and I'm going to back up here a little bit too with mine. And as I grew up, basically with my mother, my dad was Marine Secret Service, etc. And I didn't know that at a young age. I discovered that actually later. He never told me. I knew he was in the military at one time, sergeant in the military. But at around 17 years old, when I quit school, I had had enough. I had started surfing at about 14. I really liked that, so school became very, very boring. And like in book 2, I had many real side experiences preparing, and didn't quite understand everything, because again, I had come into this place, and it's like a dark room, and you're kind of groping your way along as you go through each lifetime. And so at about age 17, I was really tired of school. I told my mom, and so she just kind of let it be. And not too long after that, I moved out with a friend of mine, and we went down south to a place called San Clemente, Dana Point, and we stayed there for a while. I left home with like $45 in those days when I was 17 years old. I was born in 1948, so whatever I was at that age. And anyhow, so also met another friend of mine that wanted to go on this adventure. I won't really get into that, but we went down to deep into the mainland of Mexico. And so certain things happened and whatsoever. So as we were surfing down there and what have you, we were actually apprehended by American authorities. And And so they made us an offer to do surveillance and kind of like be spies for certain things down there. And so I agreed, and so I did that. My friend and I did that for about a year or so. My dad got wind of it at the time, and over the years, I had told him about my real side experiences and that, but he didn't say too much about it. But then as I was into this position here with the government agents, and they were paying us cash. It was actually pretty good, very good actually, and we were down there surfing. He said that I might be interested in something else that is very, very interesting along my lines. And so this is where I was introduced to Secret Service, secret things like the Montauk Project and things like that, etc., where the government does time travel and all these other things, and works on people's minds. There's many movies on these things. One of them is called Firestarter. That's one, but there's many, many more that show what's going on here. So I got into the remote viewing, astral projection aspect of it, etc., with seers and so on. And so I went through a lot of different things and all over the world, and the whole world's tunneled under the ground. So you have these high-speed trains and whatever that can travel anywhere super fast around the world, etc. So for a lot of years, off and on, I went through this, even space travel, flying saucers, aliens, etc. It's all there. It's all hidden. Most people don't know about this. And so I learned a lot about what was going on with the governments and their plans, etc. Some of these agencies, some of these areas, these Secret Service areas, I just use that term, are not even known by many government officials, etc. They're just not aware of it. There's a lot of secrecy in the governments of the world and all that too, and with the aliens and what have you. And there's so much going on because it's everywhere. It's here, other planets, etc. And so coming up through this, and with Rebazar and the real guides on the real side too, preparing me, because the big preparation as Paul came out with his Eckankar, and Rebazar prompted me to get into that at about age 22, about 1970. I got into Eckankar, and it was kind of a front kind of deal is what it was. And so I was to go through this, and things were going to be coming up because Paul was going to be leaving the area, the physical realm, because he had done his part. And so there were a couple others that were going to be like caretakers, just kind of manage the Eckankar membership and all this stuff. In other words, it was kind of vague in a way, you might say. But also they showed me in the background, the reptilians had prompted a bunch of people, had bought off a bunch of people in Eckankar, some of the board of directors, and there was Joan Cross, who would become Harold's wife in the future, etc. She was first associated with Darwin, and this is where things were prompted, and she was approached by them, and she was more than willing, because she was interested in being somebody taking over whatever. So they made her this offer that they would help her take over when Paul left, because they knew what was going on. Eckankar and the entire membership and whatever, etc., for them, because they didn't like what was being presented, so they wanted to start to distort it in some ways and tapline people more so and what have you. So I was privy to this too, shown this, etc. Again, it's choice. People make choices, whether they're conscious of it or not. And so it came to be that Joan was able to prompt Darwin Gross when he accepted his so-called master position in 1971. Yeah, that's when Paul left. I can remember for a minute there. 1971. And then there was the so-called Fifth Worldwide Seminar where I went to it too and met Darwin there. I had seen him on the real side, and so now this was the next position. And so he had gotten money from the board of directors, $500,000, to buy the copyrights for Paul's books, which in his mind and Joni's and whatever and others established him as he would be the next guy, etc. Because things were worked around to where he was announced and he was put in there. He was a higher initiate, and so he became the master, and then took on Paul's title, Livinec Master of the Mahanta, etc. Very interesting. I had experiences with Darwin on the real side from this physical view here, and also all the time Rebazar and Paul there showing me what's going on. So I played the role out here with it, which was okay. It was just part of it. And actually, I was supposed to be part of that, but Darwin decided to take over and kind of push me aside, etc. So, but that's okay. The boys said, just hang on. Doesn't matter because we've got things coming up. So as the years went by, I got into construction, got married, had the child, etc. Darwin was there about 10 years, did things with Darwin. There was a lady that he knew, Helen Fry, in the Wings of the Wind House out in Sedona. We had a meeting out there. I was on this building committee, and the lady said to my wife Sunday that she would come back as our daughter. And so in 1984 she did, and that's my daughter Lindsay, etc. She's, today she's 37 years old. I'm 73, so I'm a little bit older. And so as time went on, Joni got very bored with Darwin. He was very controlling, whatever. So he maneuvered Darwin to get out of the way and brought in Harold. And maneuvered Marjorie out of the way, which probably wasn't much. And then married Harold and made him the official puppet master for that time on. And yes, people had experiences with him because the real guides were still there, doing things and providing experiences for the membership, of course. But little by little, it was all seeping in. They were more so giving into the marketing ploy of Joni. And so her only focus was, because she had become reptilian, now her only focus was to control all that for the reptilians, etc. And tap line all of them. So gradually it all took over. And so when my time came in 2001 for the Rod of Power, at that time or previously, I saw the HU word, HU, just burn up and destroyed. And then along came, when I took the Rod of Power, etc., the new wasn't quite there yet. And so I used another word for a while, and it wasn't until 2007, because in around 2003, I stepped back for a while. I had taken on a lot, the construction, the service, all the stuff. I was really exhausted. I even saw myself on the real side as Indiana Jones, sitting there just totally exhausted from the run. And so I stepped back and went through a lot of actually awful things for almost 3 years and pulled myself out of that. Then came back in. Rebazar put me in the new position again, became, and I called it the New Wave Is. The boys wanted me to change the Rod of Power term. And so then the new came along at that time. It was there, but they didn't want to use it yet until I had gone through a lot of whatever to finally get a really good focus on this. etc. So as time went on, and I started to write the books, and actually 2001, I had published a couple books around 04, 05. Actually, the first one was book 2, and then I wrote book 1. I wanted to support book 2 with something that was in the past that reflected upon book 2, which was the basic idea, basic overall idea of what was taking place. So at the time in book 2, I told certain things, what was going on with the corporation, etc., but I didn't tell everything because it was just too much. And those were the babysitting days too. From Paul till then, and etc. Those were the babysitting days, and we all needed it. I was there. I liked the seminars. I met a lot of people, etc. I was a higher initiate. I taught classes in colleges, libraries, wherever I could. At the house, I had classes for over 30 years. I taught so many people over 20 years, people that I knew, etc. And this was a good time with me and my wife. And then Lindsay came along, as I said, in 1984. And so that was a real wake up too. It was really great. I actually resisted that for a lot of years. And then I finally gave in, and I'm so glad I did, because the experience was great while Lindsay was young. The first thing I did, little by little, as she became more aware and adept here, just focused her on the real side, and she was having real side experiences all the time. She could leave her body, she could do all these things, and she was just a joy to be with, etc. Former wife was a school teacher, so she took care of that side. I didn't do the academics with Lindsay. We did coloring and drawing, and we do cartooning. We do these things. We go to the beach. We'd boogie board, surf, etc. And so that went on for many years. It was great. And but at a certain point, actually 12 years old, she told me, she said, "Dad, I don't do that anymore." And so then she became the teenager. And so the rest is history. I taught her to be self-sufficient, which she did. She's got her own business, her own modeling business in Los Angeles. And so that's something I taught her. I've seen her off and on the real side, but she seems to, her interpretation of what I do seems to be odd and strange. And I talked to her a few years ago, was the last time, and still she wants to cling to her personal side and really not see anymore. So that's her choice. And my former wife, the same, and had girlfriends like in book 2, Heather, etc. Her real name is Christina. She's a sweet gal, and she had a lot of experience for 20 years with Revizor and boys on the real side, but she just threw it all away. That was her choice too. And it's taken all of us a lot of lifetimes to get here. Can't even fathom what it's taken to get to this point, to just be aware of this. And so it's very important that a person really understand and recognize gratitude and sincerity with all of this, because it is precious and it is so easy to lose. And even though it's the whole of life, you just you get back in and start catering the old routines with creation, and you so quickly forget. And I've seen it over the years since 1970. Here it's so 50 years that I've done this very adamantly, very straightforward, with my intent and everything, and seen so many people come and go, so many wonderful people. And most of them just reach the point to where, they take in the knowledge, they really like it, but at a certain point, it's almost like they get bored. They just that personal side grabs them, and it's still there. It's always still there. You still do it, but it comes to a point where you really have to start recognizing that there is more than just a personal life, and decide to make a transition from that and eventually get into a real life that supersedes everything that you can't even really imagine with the personal self. So it all becomes very, very interesting. So here we are up to date, and part of what we're going to be talking about here is the aliens and the Queen of Orion and what has taken place in the last several years here. And this has been a big preparation too. I decided this a lot of years ago. And then Rebazar brought several really good seers in the last 4 and 5 years, and eventually got into the position. And there are also videos out there with it, with one of these seers that we went over the Queen of Orion and what happened. So I just simply decided to take on the task of, looking at this and then approaching the Queen with the seers and others and the boys. And Rebazar brought in, I don't know how many silent ones. These guys are like 10,000 feet tall, and they're just beams of light that we approached the Queen of Orion, etc., and gave her the chance to, just help us out here with the Earth because of all the stuff that's going on. And we had actually interrupted a 10,000-year war with the Queen and the Orions, the reptilians, and the Syrians. We had actually interrupted that war. And so it came to the point where she wouldn't agree. And so we had many meetings with her, and she just would not agree. She was so stubborn and arrogant. So Rebazar Paul put her in the Phantom Zone. And he had brought her out one time too, gave her some time out, but put her back in. Went to the husband. He's basically a knucklehead. He was the same. He just got stupid. We thought that he would step up and, help out, be the commander of his regime and, help out the Earth. Not interested. So we put him away too. And then for the longest time, probably almost a year, 6 months to a year, there was a council. And there were so many members on the council. And so we approached these people, these aliens, they're reptilians, and had talks with them. And at first they were kind of interested and agreeable because they had saw what we did with the Queen of Orion. She was gone, and her husband was gone too. Now, when Leo and Inky were still there, we were talking with them also. Those are the two sons, and people can find videos of those on YouTube, many places, and there's different views of them, whatever. They had originally come to this planet here and started all this funny stuff on this planet, let alone other planets and everything else. And you can look at the planets in this solar system here, and they're basically all devastated. Well, how did they come to be like that? So it's not hard to see what's going on, and everything has become warring over the eons, and it's ridiculous. It's all about control and warring because people are individuals are caught up in these body types, and they want to survive and feel that aggression is the way to go, but it's really not. It's really awareness. And so going through the council, eventually we dwindled the council down. We whittled it down to about 5 that would agree. There was some military commanders, generals, or whatever you want to call them there. They wanted the war machine to go on. This is, they're bored. This is all they know. And so we whittled them out of there, etc. I put a few of them in the Phantom Zone too because they wouldn't cooperate. So we just take them away. Just ask Paul and Darwin, Paul and Rebazar, take them away. Take them away. So as the other council would see this, then they started to agree. But eventually, we didn't even meet with the council. It was enough nonsense. It just talk. And so we were after something else, which I'm not going to really mention here, but certain people know about it. And we were after something else to help out the Earth, etc. And so Enlil and Inky were cooperative. I actually made a deal with Enlil. And so as time went on, they saw what we were doing, and we would have meetings. I would have meetings every night with these seers for several years. And Leo and Inky were seeing what we were doing, and actually Inky was very good at technology and that, so he would go on some of the other planets and handle the subliminal send-outs that the reptilians had set up for the Earth people. In other words, there are communication places like on the dark side of the moon and all that, and the different planets where they send out subliminals into the atmosphere through the planets and mainly Earth, wherever anybody's at, etc., constantly doing that. So he took over that. So we stopped doing that. We presented the new you to them, etc. And Leo was to be basically, I made him commander of the all the spaceships and the other aliens that we met. We went to many planets, many places, the Seers, and so we went to many planets, many places through all the levels to bring so much of this together. That's why there's thousands of spaceships around the Earth. Some of them are as big as planets. I mean, just unbelievable aliens, etc., all out there. And one of the factors was the Palladians. As we went to their planet and spoke with them, more into the social life in a way, the people that we met. I mean, I'm sure it's different all through their systems or whatever, but these individuals were actually the ones that made the warships for the Orions. And I'm sure a lot of people don't know that. But there's many factors, many sides to everything. Just like the United States government, people think it's all white and clean, but it makes all the war machines and destroys others. And this is really sad how it is, because the Earth is being very devastated and destroyed, and we know that, and that's why the Universal New Seers, etc., are stepping up to do something. Worldwide educators, everything that I've created for this, for the all-natural environment, because there are many individuals that can still wake up and become aware beyond all the systems, more so than any of the systems and the old masters and their pretty words and ancient sayings and all these things like that, ceremonies, rituals, worshiping and praying gods that don't exist. This was all invented. These gods were invented by Enlil and Inky and others, etc. So you have this whole consciousness that's in demise now, black holes in the galaxy, sucking in the planets, etc., into an unconsciousness until the entire creation bubble here implodes. And so those individuals that don't make it through this one will go into the next creation bubble and start again, etc. So everything here has become by choice. So there's a lot more to this. We'll get through this. This is a basic overview of what we're going to go through here. And so I'm going to stop right now, and then Dean Val and Dean Kevin have some questions for me, and this will be in the book too. So go ahead.
Thank you, Dwayne. This is Dean Val. I was curious about any kind of hierarchy or organizational structure for the off-planet aliens. You hear about the Galactic Federation. Seems like that's like the UN here, which really doesn't amount to much. But I wondered if there's any kind of structure at all, or just everybody's on their own, doing their own thing, with the Kalam God up there kind of sending out his minions. But is there anything that's at all like important to know, or is just what it is?
Well, no, it's very real. Just like on the Earth, the Earth is just a dot. This black space here we call outer space or whatever, and it's not a universe. It's really a realm. Again, the reptilians have fooled people thinking that, oh, this is a universe and this is life itself. You see, the idea of a universe is that, oh, this is where life is. No, this is a realm. This is a place. It's not a real universe, because real universes are endless. But just like on the Earth, all these agencies, all these governments and their agencies and whatever they have, and even the business world, etc. Yes, this stuff's all over the place. This realm, we'll just take this realm, this galaxy, a lot of it's just a mess because of this political stuff. It's really political, just like in the Star Wars movies. You see that hierarchy. You see it in Star Trek. You see it in so many things, etc. People look to this because things are based upon power, control, based upon military actions, political, military, and religion's in there. Actually, religion controls everything. It oversees everything. But people think it's governments and the military, but really it's religion. This is where they get the God idea for people to submit. And this is where many of these ideas, the holy wars and things like this come from. They utilize these factors, get people in control, but you have hierarchy everywhere. And even, the Lords of Karma, who are they? Another agency with a big building with giant pillars on it somewhere. They're all boring, just like the boring buildings here, etc. And many people have been seduced for lifetimes thinking that they need a government. They need authorities to tell them what to do. Well, the little birdies that fly in the trees and whatever, they don't seem to need it, and they seem to be doing fine, and they don't destroy anything or their environment. And so there is so much more to life, but through these choices, and it's School of Hard Knocks, we beat each other up, we beat ourselves up, and finally, at some point, the opportunity comes where we can figure it all out, but we have to make that decision to do that also. It's not going to just fall out of the sky. So in the meantime, a lot of obstacles with these so-called hierarchies and this and that and what have you. And yes, it's just personal bureaucracy, personal ideas, power, control, manipulation, etc. Again, do the birds do this? They don't have any struggle with any of it, but people do. And they feel that they're very intelligent because they have the technology, the knowledge, the science, and all these things, the so-called education. And really, what good is all of it? It has only led to self-destruction and getting worse and worse and worse. And so those few that do control things, doesn't matter who they are, it's happening. You're seeing it happening with chemtrails, HARP, GMO, vaccines, the viruses that they create to throw on the masses to make them strange. And this is their entertainment, actually. They like to do these things. It's really their entertainment. Yeah, they created entertainment. The Indians didn't have entertainment. They looked at the indigenous Indians that were here as an example on the North America, the American continent, what it's called now, and other places around the world. They were more focused on the environment, surviving, and also the environment, and watching their real side many times too, and learning from that. And so things have really gone through a process here, especially on this continent, the United States, northern continent, in the last 200 to 300 years. But this has all been a plan. It's all planned out. And here we are so quickly in this lifetime, we're at the edge of total annihilation through just being totally poisoned on this wonderful planet. And people came here to wake up and learn how to become more aware and eventually recognize the true reality that all life is. And one of the main reason all this destruction is taking place is because we are here. Because when I took the real position and with the real guides, I decided to do this. And so them that control this planet and others, they don't want to see people wake up. They'd rather destroy the place and have them come back into future lifetimes and manipulate them again. So, yes, and that's the hierarchy. Yes, it's all over the place because that's their reference. Just like on Earth, you have the governments. They're the hierarchy. It's the same thing. It's no different. Yeah, it's the same nonsense all over. They set these things up as their backup. for people to look to as they create these things, as they create their technology. They get people to agree to it, just like everybody carries their cell phones around and just look at their cell phones all day. They get people to agree to it. And so here we are dealing with it. So, yes, Val, there you go.
Thank you.
Kevin, did you have something? Mr. Kevin?
Yeah, I was going to ask, as you were speaking, how the reptilians took over Ekankar. I was curious if that was your first exposure to the reality of the reptilians, or if you saw any evidence of them while you were a part of the secret military programs and working in all the underground systems, if you saw any evidence of their presence there.
Oh yeah, many different types of aliens. And even before that, I was introduced on the real side, even before coming into this life. You see, it's like looking at a world map. You see all the different factors, and it's very simple, really. It's just different body types, and everybody has, as they've gone through lifetime and lifetime and made decisions, they eventually come out how they do. That's all there is to it. It's like designing a car. You decide how you want it designed accordingly. And so, as we create our consciousness because of cause and effect and creation, yes, there's so many, just like the people on the earth, there's so many different types. And I don't even know all the types. I don't really care. It's like all the different types of bugs on the earth, that bother us, or that are there for the birds, what have you. We don't know all the different types. They're bugs. We just call them bugs, right? So, in a way, the aliens are like that too, especially if they bother you. They're just bugs. And so, yeah, they're there. But I was very, and still am in a way, very sheltered from these things. Kept away so that I can just focus on what I'm doing. It's like kind of like the president in the White House. He's got all the security, so nobody bothers him. If he's renting some apartment out there, people are going to be standing outside taking pictures and banging on the door all the time. So how's he going to be able to do his job? So in a way, it's kind of like that, but I'm still bothered and attacked and what have you, because we're all here. But yeah, that's always been a given, because you, even though this lifetime you have experienced what you have in past lifetimes, they were there also. It's always been there. And again, we're aliens to them and others too, where everybody's an alien, actually. It's really kind of humorous. We're all in outer space, and we're all, on these rocks, and things are happening, and that's really what it is. So the big picture is recognizing the is through all of this, getting through this, and learning how to focus and recognizing that true reality. And it is a heck of a challenge, simply because all the lifetimes we've been indoctrinated with ideas that we really cling to as our reality. And so it takes a while to be able to let go of those ideas that you think are real, as opposed to seeing and recognizing what is real. So, yes. And you know these things very well, Kevin. It's great that you're here, because you have all this experience with these reptilians and stuff like that. I don't have many, unless there's, you see it on the real side at times where I've talked to them, and I constantly confront them, but it doesn't always come through to my personal self. It's not necessary, because I'm focused on other things here to establish for the world here, trying to do this before it's destroyed. So that's my main focus in Revazar and Paul and them, and the real me takes care of that many times in that other area. But yourself, you probably rather not see them. It's not that big of a thrill. Once you do see them, you probably don't want to see them. You probably want to see a pretty girl or something like that, or one of your friends. So, yeah.
Okay, and would you like to perhaps go over the origins of the reptilian species, how they developed along the warlike ways that they did?
Well, it's kind of like, just like, you have a pond of water out there. And at first it's just water. It can just be something in your backyard or whatever. Then all of a sudden one day you walk out and all of a sudden there's like little squiggly things in the water. And eventually, as time goes on, as the water is still there, like ponds and swamplands or whatever, and it's just the same here again, as we each come into, as we'll just say these little souls, we're just, these little souls, these little drops of light, as we come into each creation bubble, we are kind of set up in a way, like a classroom, like kindergarten. We're kind of set up into certain positions to start things off because we don't know what to do, so we're set up. And just like the school teacher would, bring you into the room, get your desk, get you set up, give you a paper and pencil, whatever, get you set up, get you going to start to do something. And what's the first thing the teacher does? Tells you to write your name on a piece of paper at the very top, if you can write at 5 years old, whatever. And so the same thing has taken place as we've come into all this. And we're like little microbes or whatever. We're just like little amoebas or microbes or whatever you want to call it. We're something, okay? We're this or that or something. And today we got names for all these things, scientific names, but we're just something. We're just going through experience. We're wiggling around in whatever environment has been set up for us. And lifetimes pass so quickly because there's no notion of time. There's no notion of anything. So you might say we zoom along because it doesn't matter. Nothing is considered. And so little by little, as we make the choices, as you eventually start to move into other body types, as you graduate from one and you're moved along into other body types, pretty soon you're a fish, you're chicken, you're some type of bird, you're a cat, whatever. So, every step you take, every notion, instinct, whatever, you're moving along and eventually into a body where it has more faculties that you can relate to. So we call this the human body. This is what we know, but it can be any body type, all right? And so this can be seen on the real. I don't investigate all these things because I'm really not interested. I'm more focused always on the nowness, and it can be any type of body type. And we are shown, again, our real awareness is shown how to, you might say, create these things for ourselves as we get to a certain point. And just like you're going to school at a certain point, the teacher shows you how to do certain things, if it's in the business world or in science or fixing cars or whatever, there's auto shop. You see, all of a sudden you've reached that point where you're able to do things. And so each person makes choices. So some kids, most kids probably will, they'll fix and clean cars and whatever, but there's always going to be those few that would rather steal cars. Okay, steal hubcaps, steal cars. That's how it was in high school when it was stealing hubcaps. Today you have rims, so they don't steal your rims unless they jack up your car. They steal your wheels. And they do that too. Ford jacks, they jack up the whole car, they steal your wheels. That's very prevalent too, because the rims and the wheels are really cool, so they'll just steal all four of them. They prep for that. But again, choices are made, and things happen through those choices. And we go through things. It can be like a person in the cowboy and Indian days where he robbed a bank or shot somebody, and they hung him. He comes back this lifetime, he's got a crooked neck because he carries that impression, very strong impression of being hung and the neck broken, etc., or whatever other effects there were, or eaten by something, what have you. And we all go through these things. So the course of eons, we'll say, and what have you, thousands and thousands of lifetimes, there's certain individuals that just want to, just get involved with the things that just bother others. This has just become their way of life, and they're so used to it. And they've learned ways to also live longer than most, and manipulate situations. So it's like anybody that learns something in the business world, they go to school, eventually learn it, and now you have these bankers and these rich people in the monarchy for centuries and beyond that they learn the tricks of the trade, and they just take over and use everyone else as subjects and slaves. And so at the same time, there's demons on the astral realm and other places that influence them because they have certain attitudes, and then they're also shown, different aspects of mainly black magic and what have you, and so the transformations come, etc. And here we are. Yeah, here we are, this the big mess, really. And it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't have to. And so because people lack the awareness, they lacked the real knowledge, and so things were brought out, but they were always distorted. Always become distorted. Again, just like Paul's teaching, where it was brought through very simply, and many people thought that was the ultimate, but it's not. And so transformations have taken place, and I've seen the membership on the real side. I wrote a group on it called Pizza Dough, and saw them all, basically most of them, as pizza dough. And so again, so they've transformed their consciousness, whatever it was, from their spiritual idea into pizza dough. Literally, they were on the real side. They were sitting there like pieces of, like sheets of pizza on these wall benches. And they were just literally all pizza dough. You couldn't even tell them apart. They had slight little lines between them. But I went over and touched one of them, and that's just what they were. They were pizza dough. That's their consciousness. So what are they going to become? They're set up to become totally robotized, which they are. They're totally subservient, and so they're willing to, subject themselves to the authority that they look to, which is really Reptilian Joni, who markets Harry. So now she's, I guess, in the hospital and going through really bad stuff, etc. But the real side of her is still out there. She's a witch, but her physical body is really warped, etc. So is Harry's. This is the transition. And so they take that on, also the burden, especially people like that, they take on the burden of others that they've taplined. They're all connected to them. See, this is what they don't get. They think they control them, but they're actually connected to all of them. And whatever's been decided, well, they're all together, and they're all going to take themselves through whatever, the hell that they've created, which really goes nowhere, as the members are thinking that they're going to get something or go somewhere. Well, they're not. They're only going to go where, they're controlled by who they're controlled by, etc. And so it becomes really a big mess, and you can't talk people out of that. Again, that emotional attachment is very, very strong. So you see what takes place. It's just like when a person goes through certain experiences, a lot of stress or whatever, the body gets weird, or they take drugs, the body starts to change and distort. And so this carries on. This carries on until the individual is really a mess. And parts of the reptilians and other aliens and whatever, this is why they abduct humans, because they want the cleaner side or the pure side of the humans, because they actually want to get back to something more normal. So they abduct people, do experiments, etc., try to figure things out for themselves through that means, when they could simply become more aware. And I'll set it in that way, because the awareness is everything. So through the experience of untold numbers of souls coming in, who can say, because it's like endless, and they're constantly coming in through these, and they're making choices. And very rapidly, you might say in a way, do they go through a process to where they come out all of a sudden? And who can say what time we're in, you see? We've decided, some people have decided time frames. Well, this is an illusion. So what time frame is the right time frame, or where are we really at? Who can say? Because life is an isness, and this is the best part of it, to recognize that, because that's all life is an isness. It is now, as opposed to creation itself and what's going on. So these things aren't important, but we have to deal with them. So we utilize the information of these things as a relationship for people to relate to, and see if they can start to see beyond that. But as we all stand as real beings, as we all become aware and recognize this, then we don't need any of the restrictions of creation. And that's a whole lot. So as we stick with this, as we stick with the real guides, keep learning to more so recognize the all is, it eventually comes to pass to where this, again, it's a transition. This personal self just dissolves all away little by little. But you really have to decide that, because again, you have relationships here, etc. So and the reptilians too, they develop their relationships, which help them become worse. When you got buddies that like to destroy everything, hey, they all get in a gang, and so they help each other get worse and take on worse body types in the future, because that's all they have. Is if they want to experience anything at all, it's like an old car. You can't afford a new one, so you get the old car, and that's what you drive around, and it smokes and it sputters and whatever. Well, it's because you haven't earned your way to get a better car that doesn't do that. And so the body types are the same. Everybody's got to earn their way, and everything is cause and effect agitation, and we know that. So, and the lords of karma, they're kind of a joke, really, like governments of the world, etc. They have their place, but they're self-appointed politicians too, like anybody in the creation bubble. The only ones that basically aren't are the animals, and especially the birds and the fish and what have you. They don't self-appoint themselves anything. They just do what they do, and they got to deal with the humans that are destroying the planet. So, very few people will listen to the little birdie. That's some of it, Kevin. Yes, thank you for asking.
This is where the little self can be your buddy, or it can be your worst nightmare. Like Chucky. You decide.